Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. It's 12:30. It's Monday, and I'm joined by Kevin Graham. Welcome back, Kev. A great weekend to talk about, absolutely. But behind me, there is an Adidas Predator football boot right there. Look at that. This is the 1994 original, right? And that, I have to start off with, was signed last night by the one and only John Collins. What is John Collins' legacy to you, Kev? Because I launched this event with JC, obviously with a Celtic State of Mind at Gracie's last night, Sunday night. 150 turned out, which is unbelievable at this time of the year. And I think he changed a few people's opinions. And I've seen a few things on social media saying John Collins this, John Collins that. There's a lot of fans don't have a great kind of view of this player. What's your view of John Collins?
My view of John Collins is this: as a player, I was utterly blessed to see him and Paul McStay in the same midfield for 5 or 6 seasons. As an assistant manager, Lukey came in, forced on Ronnie, probably, as an assistant manager. There's obviously the story at Hibs when he was bench pressing and all of that, which is an open goal.
Benchmark. That's an open goal benchmark.
It's an open goal benchmark, aye. And I think that hasn't bode well with him because of that. The other night that you done with him when you had Van Hooijdonk and Cadet, that night he completely changed my opinion of him. He was very knowledgeable about the game. He was very funny. He was very welcoming. Very, very different from the persona that he comes across in the media. Which, wow, somebody's got a media personality. Somebody's got a persona that they come across in the media. I can see where the arrogance comes from, but again, that comes from second-hand stories. And even then, he would admit it himself that he did do it. He's made mistakes, especially with the young players. But as an assistant manager at the time, he was there under Ronnie. It didn't quite work longer term. A lot of the players probably kicked back against it in a very, very public fashion. But he was part of the foundation of building Brendan's Invincible team. So,
yes.
So that's the legacy of Ronnie Dial and John Collins as a manager and assistant manager of Celtic Football Club. But he was one of the best. He was one of the greatest midfielders Scotland's ever produced.
Right. There's so much to unpack with that, Kev. I agree with so much of what you said there. I'm like yourself, similar vintage in terms of the game-going antics as a youngster, and those dark days, during Rangers 9 in a row, John Collins was a bright spark, one of very few bright sparks. He's there when Fergus comes in and takes over. He's there during the Lou McCarry days. We spoke all about this, by the way. He told us that as a 16-year-old at Hibs, he was brought in at Hibs by Pat Stanton. When you start adding up or joining up the dots, Pat Stanton brings him to Hibs. He gets his debut in a pre-season friendly against Man City. And who's the Man City manager but Billy McNeil? And Billy McNeil's his dad's hero. And then that day where he had to meet him to sign for Celtic, him and his old man were just blown away. Celtic daft. A lot of people don't realise that. Celtic daft. He was at the boys' club as a young guy. His old man got an injury at his work, couldn't drive the long distance to take him to training. And a nearer club that he could go to was Hibs. He ended up going and making his name there. But I think you touch on a really interesting point there in relation to the legacy for me. Obviously, a class player, but during a really dark time for Celtic. The legacy for me is this. He comes in, like you say, foisted upon Ronnie, because Ronnie was meant to be a second choice. He was meant to be second to Roy Keane, I think. And then he ends up becoming the manager, and John Collins is his number 2. Have a look at some of the players that they brought to the football club. Right. Now, he confirmed last night they did not want Carlton Cole or Colin Kazim Richards, right? Because I knew that was Richards. Colin Kazim Richards, yeah?
Yes, Colin Kazim Richards, yes.
Maybe I've airbrushed that name out of my head. By the way, we will get to the weekend's game and the game coming up on Wednesday. But there's interesting points, and I know that a lot of people love the kind of insight that these ex-players and coaches can give you, Kev. So, Carlton Cole, Colin Kazim Richards, not players that Ronnie or John wanted at the football club. They were offered them. They knocked them back. They were signed anyway. So that shows you the inner workings. But he spoke about guys like Stuart Armstrong. So Stuart Armstrong's a player that's been identified. He comes in. We end up making something like £6 million on that guy, don't we? I mean, didn't we sell him for about £8 million? Brought him in for £1.5 million. Ryan Christie. There's a relationship there between John Collins and his former teammate, John Hughes. They work together at Livingston as well. They're really good pals. And Yogi gives John the heads up on Christie. We bring him in and we end up making money on Ryan Christie. Chris Ayer cost here £400,000 from the Norwegian team start. And we end up selling him for £12 million. So there are success stories. You then move on to the introduction of a few of the young guys coming through. Kieran Tierney given his debut by Ronnie and John Collins, Callum McGregor, and Tony Ralston. So you look at the legacy, and the legacy for me is like what you said there. They started building the foundations of that team that Brendan would inherit. Obviously, he then supplemented that with his own signings. But here's one for you that I didn't know about, Kevin. I don't know if this was public knowledge. I've never read it anywhere. John Collins used to play for Fulham. He still had his contacts down there. He's speaking to the guys down at Fulham. They let him know what the situation is with Moussa Dembele in relation to the cross-border transfer. I think it would have cost us £4 or £5 million to get him under normal circumstances. Whatever the cross-border clause was meant that we only had to pay £500,000. What did we sell him for? £20 million. Mm-hmm. That is obviously given to Brendan Rodgers because the deal was done whilst Brendan was at the football club. The wheels were in motion when John Collins and Ronnie Dyler were at Celtic. I did not know that until last night. And I love these wee tidbits. So there's another thing that we should be glad of, because for me, Dembele's one of the best strikers I've seen in the hoops.
I didn't put two and two together with the Collins connection, with his Fulham connection, but I thought it was quite widely known that Celtic were already in talks with Dembele before they appointed Rodgers. I think even Rodgers admits that in his book.
And then Rodgers and Dembele didn't have the best of relationships in the end, did they? So he wasn't really a Rodgers man insofar as identified and spoken to, etc. So it's, as you say, the deal was underway. But Johnny Collins. Now, he also took responsibility for the bad signings as well, and not just Carlton Cole and Colin Kazim Richards. It was a great insight. I loved it. That football boot is 30 years old. It's a match-worn football boot, Kev, worn by a phenomenal player, and Johnny Collins has signed it. So there you go. It's finally made it onto my shelf. And I put it in front of Neely Mockin because Neely Mockin, by that point, was the kit man and he dealt with the football boots. And John was having a good laugh about back in Neely's day. You know, you would need to hammer your studs into the bottom of the boots, and he's walking about with these Predators. So you can imagine Neely's reaction to that. Let's talk modern day Celtic, Kev. Unless there's anything else you want to throw in about Johnny Collins.
No, but look, everything seems to be quite black and white when you're a fan, eh? Oh, he left us. He was first ever Bosman, this and that, eh? But we were a mess at that point. And he would have been about 26, 27 at that point when he actually left. So you're talking about one big time contract, a chance to move to Monaco. A lot of people had career choices against people. You have a look at him and Dyler. Always says that and you can go back to 2017 on this podcast. Ronnie Dyler had the right idea, but Brendan Rodgers was just a massive upgrade on Dyler, on how we could get those players to play. Those players had that in them, and it was Brendan Rodgers and Chris Davis that brought it out of them. But the Rodgers, Collins and Dyler identified them. That's why I've always got a soft spot for Ronnie as well. I think he's a really, really decent guy. I think wrong place, wrong time. The Kazim Richards and the Carlton Cole things actually proved that the CEO at the time thought he could walk over him.
Yeah.
and go, you're doing what I tell you to do. And you even have a look at the way the appointment came about. We're going to let Johan go, Neil, and you're going to get this guy called Ronnie Dyler as your assistant manager. Neil, I'm not having that, I'm resigning. Right, we'll offer Roy Keane the job. Roy, you're going to get this guy called Ronnie Dyler as your assistant manager. Roy Keane, I'm not having that. Ronnie, do you want the job? That's the way it came about.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And right away, Dyler's not going to say no. Nobody's going to say no. Neil Lennon's not going to say no in the shower to come back, with the chance to win 9 and 10 in a row, chance to do a treble. He's not going to say no, but it gives the power back to the guy sitting in the boardroom. I appointed you when you've got no credentials here.
Absolutely.
So
and it was a different vibe in terms of the control element. It was a completely different vibe that you got under Ange and now under Brendan, now that we've got over that first transfer window that was obviously last summer. So I do find it interesting. You can then start joining the dots, Kev, like you say, because we want to build up an understanding of how things work at our football club. One final thing before we move on to the current affairs at Celtic Football Club is at the end of the night, a guy came into the kind of dressing room backstage, and he obviously knew John, and they were having a chat and blah, blah, blah. And he had gone down to Fulham, he had played at St Johnstone. It turns out that it was Kieran McAnespie. You remember Kieran McAnespie?
I do. He got a big move to Fulham.
Yes.
St Johnstone, did he not? Quite a bit of money.
Yeah, he did. And then he came up and he played for a number of clubs in Scotland. He was explaining that Craig Brown, everybody I've ever spoken to that worked with Craig Brown, I've got none but good things to say about him, Kev. I know he was an unfashionable manager. But Craig Brown had this idea that when they were going to major finals, etc., they would take boot boys, young guys who back in the day would carry hampers and all that. It was slightly different in 1998. But they took a collection of younger players who were maybe involved in under-21s so that they knew what was expected of them as a Scottish international, the way they conducted themselves. They would be involved in drills and all the rest of it. And McAnespie was one of those guys. And the feeling I got last night was that's how he and John Collins got to know each other. Mm-hmm. Now, can you remember the goal that Collins scored against Brazil? Can you remember the celebration? It was quite iconic where Collins was giving all that and he's pointing at his name in the back of his jersey. Before the game, they dared to dream, Kev. The players dared to dream. And it was like, what are you going to do if you score against Brazil? You're going to have that figured out in your mind, because this is going to be broadcast all over the globe forevermore. You need to know what you're going to do. You can't do the Gordon Strachan leg up on the billboard when obviously he scored against Germany in 86. So Johnny Collins was not only the free kick taker, but the penalty kick taker. And so the chances were he would have an opportunity to score a goal. So the discussion then ensued, what's John Collins going to do if he scores against Brazil in the opening game of the World Cup finals? And it was McAnespie who said, I almost called him Aidan, Kieran McAnespie, who said, right, do that. Do that. And Collins absolutely followed that suggestion, and it was broadcast all over the world. I'm sure it was part of a montage for Sports Scene for quite a few years when Collins...
It's an iconic Scottish moment.
Oh, yes.
It is one of the iconic Scottish moments. I spoke to John and asked him about the wink at the cameras, and he says it was for his 2 daughters. That's why he winked at the cameras, to say that he was thinking about them.
Yeah,
somebody in the comments just reminded me that Mr. McAnespie had an interesting career after football, if you want to Google it.
Is he not a fireman?
I think he was a cameraman.
Was he? A cameraman? All right.
Yes.
Well,
if I'm thinking of the same guy, maybe need to Google it. But I'm sure when I saw his name coming up there, somebody put it in the comments, went, that's right, I'm sure he was. There was an expose on an ex-footballer and a certain station, shall we say.
Okay, well, I'll need to Google that, Kev. Is it an X-rated video? Come on.
Yes.
Spill the beans, right?
But it wasn't illegal.
Okay.
He was just a cameraman.
All right. Right, okay. I'll have a look at that. Thanks for sharing that. There's always something else to find out about the world of football. We are, of course, talking about, talking to John's daughter's final point, the daughters that he winked at. One of them is now a successful actor, Hannah Collins. You might have seen her on the telly. Aye, there you go. Andy Young, welcome back to the show. It was great seeing all the squad members coming in and making a difference. In the context of the SPL, the drop-off in quality is non-existent, and they all made their case to be first-choice picks. And I think a big part of the discussion today will be around, obviously, some of the guys that came in and how that's going to affect the thinking about the selection on Wednesday night against Aberdeen. Which is, of course, a table-topping clash. Before we move on, Kev, how long are we going to call it a table-topping clash? How long can Aberdeen remain fixed in second position? Because I've been getting told all season, it's a flash in the pan, Rangers have got the squad depth, Rangers will come back, Aberdeen will drop off. There's been a slight drop-off, of course, from chasing first position, but they seem pretty comfortable in second, Kev.
They do seem pretty comfortable in second, but then you'll have a look at it, that's 4 points. No, wait a minute, that's 7 points dropped in their last 3 games.
Was it a loss, a draw and a draw, Aberdeen?
A loss, a draw and a draw. 3 tough away games, right enough. 3 tough away games. So Rangers have gained. I don't know what Rangers are behind them.
7.
We're getting into the 3 game a week. Like slog, the ultramarathon, as Brendan calls it. I think Rangers will possibly be second by the time we play them on January the 2nd.
Are you still thinking that, Kev? Now, I mean, at the weekend, I had one eye on what was going on with the 2 games because I was preparing to go through to Glasgow to get my Adidas Predator football boot signed and also speak to John Collins. That's an original.
Did your boot ever score at Ibrox?
That one didn't. That particular boot didn't. But obviously, famously, Collins' one is now in the Adidas.
Did I see that boot scoring in a video from a Fife schoolboy game? Is that the boot that
potentially? There is video footage. It went viral because of the quality, the finish. You might have seen that goal. But we'll move on, Kev, because a lot of people obviously wanted to talk about Wednesday night. So you're still thinking that they're going to drop off as quickly as that? So by the beginning of next month, you think Rangers will be second?
Well, we beat them on Wednesday night and Rangers won their game. It's down to 4.
Yeah.
So it's I need a turnaround. And Aberdeen already this season have actually proved that they struggle playing the 3 games a week with a strong squad depth. Their goalkeeper, who's been their man, one of their main men this season, is injured. And they're just kind of struggling for form at this precise moment in time. Look, they're a decent side. They, as I say, they do remind me of one of these Scandinavian sides that we actually used to face in the Champions League qualifiers. Very well organised. They've got pace up front, which means that they'll win more games in Scotland than they'll actually lose against the other teams, probably out with the. So they've got pace in really, really decent areas, and it'll be a very, very tough game for us on Wednesday night. It should be a tough game for us going to Pittodrie. We are playing the team that's second in the league, but it does come down to the way that they play. Is very high energy, and have they actually got the legs to handle the 3 games a week between now and January and the end of January?
This is a big thing.
And this was always time that I reckoned that it might get a wee bit shaky for them.
Yeah. And I threw out there, Kev, that January would also be a test of mettle in terms of their ambition as a football club, because to combat that level of standard and performance and the amount of games that you're playing at that point of the season, you really need to strengthen your squad. Whether or not they do it, that's the big question, because you're probably looking at 3 players. Now, if Celtic were to sign 3 players, I'd be happy. If Aberdeen are able to do it, how realistic is that? I'm not so sure. We're going to run through some of the changes that were made at the weekend, who stepped up, who's thrown down a gauntlet for Brendan Rodgers and giving him a good headache for Wednesday night. We're going to be talking all about that. Barry O'Sullivan, you're on the YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube, then give us a big thumbs up. subscribe to the channel. Things are going to change in 2025. We're going to improve it. We're going to improve the service that you get from a Celtic State of Mind. Always looking to increase the content and the standard of that as well. So keep your eyes peeled. We are working on it behind the scenes. Morning, troops. I was so impressed with Luke McCowan on Saturday. He's given Brendan a real headache for Wednesday night. I'm going to start off with Luke McCowan then, right? I mean, how often do you see a goal and 3 assists, Kevin, in one game? In fact, in one half of football. The performance that he put in, the goal, for example, the confidence, the finesse, the technique, unbelievable. He more or less orchestrated the game. He kind of ran the show, didn't he, Luke McCowan?
He did. He did run the show, and you're talking about a goal and 3 assists, but then he set up a number of chances as well with intelligent through balls. He is a natural number 8, and I think that's something that we've maybe seen in Europe that we struggle with. He's got the skill set of a natural 8, like a creative guy who's got a wee bit of dig to actually get back and that as well. He's not a number 10. Sometimes when you had a look at Rodgers' first team, you had guys like, you had Rodgers, he would play the double pivot, and Rodgers would be the third midfielder who was actually a 10. Now we play with a 6 and 2 8s, and I still think the 2 8s doesn't suit the guys that we would call our first choices. But you play McCowan in that 8 role, and you actually saw it was utterly fantastic. Really, really creative, worked hard, intelligence to be in the right place at the right time. He never wasted a ball, but he wasn't fancy with it. He was just efficient. He knew where he had to be. He knew how to break the lines. He knew how to break into space. He was a natural number 8 in that position. I think a lot of folk were maybe expecting him to come in and be the number 6 like Callum McGregor. I kind of was, because I was having a look at guys like Paul Hartley and Robson, who came in latter stages of their career and made an absolute made a difference to Celtic. But this guy, he's got a wee bit more creativity, and they 2 boys. He is a really, really, I'm going to say, he's an intelligent football player. I love intelligent football players. So does Brendan Rodgers love intelligent football players. And Saturday was his game, complete and utterly. He completely owned that game. So it's an interesting dilemma that Rodgers has got.
Mm-hmm.
An absolutely interesting dilemma Rodgers got. But look, he's a 26-year-old. The guy, he's been in the Championship. He played with Dundee last season. He signed for his boyhood club. It's a romantic fairy story that we love as Celtic fans. It really is. It really is. But wider picture, he's got something to offer that first team, because he's got a skill set that I don't think any of the other midfielders have actually got. I think he's more a natural fit and a free. And it would be interesting to see if Rodgers would give him a go when we actually do step up, which will be Pittodrie on Wednesday night, which will be going to Ibrox, and honestly it will be in Europe, because he's maybe more suited in that free than your Engels or your Atati.
Do you play him, Kev? Does he start for you?
On Wednesday night?
Yes.
Yes.
He does. Right. I'll take a note of that. So he starts. I'm just looking at his game time for Celtic, because he's only played one 90-minute game of football. 75, 13, 29, 15, 10, 13, 15, 5, 70. When you look at it like that, you're thinking, wow, he's only played 70 or more minutes 3 times for Celtic. Yet he has made an impact. He scored 3 goals and he's created 3 goals. I think this is an interesting point as well from Jay Conley, Jay Larkin, who we were talking last week about Brendan building a team of leaders. And some of the guys I was talking about was, of course, Schmeichel, I think's a leader, Johnston, Trusty, Carter Vickers. You've spoken in the past about Taylor being a leader, Callum McGregor. All these guys in one team who can lead the way when the chips are down and grab games by the scruff of the neck. I think that's a good point. McCowan is also a leader. He captained Dundee. He has had that role at football club. He knows about the responsibility of that. it probably has helped him settle in so readily, because he doesn't feel as if he's in the wrong picture, Kev. You know, he's one of these guys that I love. You're talking about intelligent footballers. I'll tell you what I love. I love seeing a footballer who continually demands the ball, always getting into space. There's footballers out there at the top end of the game who hide. They actually hide in a game, particularly when things aren't going your way, and they'll stand the wrong side of a player who's marking them and put his hand up so it looks like he's looking for the ball, but he's never going to get the ball because he's not in a good position.
Yeah. Hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, McCowan never does it. Always looking for the ball, always trying to create space, Kev, even when he's got somebody breathing down his neck. So he is a leader. We'll get to Greg Taylor. I'm pretty sure that'll be another bone of contention or a discussion point.
And I mentioned it last week as well, who he was in Dubai with. I found that a really interesting picture.
That group.
The group that he was in Dubai with, I'd found that a really interesting picture.
The core group, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Now, by the way, here's another thing, just jumping back to the Kieran Tierney, not the rumours, his introduction to the football team, and you heard the story about, we needed a left back, etc., etc. One thing that I found interesting was they were going to play, previous to Tierney getting called up for that training session, they were going to play some friendly games in the pre-season, and they basically went to the academy and goes, we need a left back. We're short on left backs, we need one. And the two players that were recommended to them were not Kieran Tierney. Neither of the two of them. So
does that not surprise me?
So the academy had Tierney at least number 3 in the academy setup. Never mind, saying to Ronnie and John, this player. And then it so happens that they go and watch a B team game. I think he said it was at Morton, because we were playing games down at Caplo at that time, remember? And he stood out like a sore thumb. Kieran Tierney stood out like a sore thumb. They're like, wait a minute, he needs to come and train with us. So the whole story around that intrigues me as well, because it's sliding doors at times, Kev. And we were talking about, the footballers that go away at the moment from Scotland and end up in Italy. And there seems to be quite a few who have gone to Italy in the not too distant past. And it got me to thinking around the McTominay and Gilmour transfer fees. And I thought to myself, right, let's have a look at the most expensive Scottish footballers of all time. Every so often we update that list, Kev. And I'm going to keep it as a top 11, right? And why am I doing that? Because you might be surprised at a couple of the guys who are in this. This is a cumulative transfer fees. So this is throughout your entire football career, Kev. Every transfer fee that's been paid for you, add it up, and then you will get the most expensive Scottish footballer of all time. This is a top 11, right? Tell me if I've missed anybody in the comments section. At number 11, Ollie McBurney, who has cost a combined amount of 19.45 million euros. Ollie McBurney. Just above him, Billy Gilmour, 22.3 million. We're talking euros. Robert Snodgrass, so he had quite a few big money transfers, Kev. He's sitting at 23.11. James McCarthy is in there, having accumulated €23.7 million, in transfer fees. Then we've got Ross McCormack, 26.64. I found it hilarious to find out that he invaded the pitch when we stopped to 10 under Wim Jansen. As a Celtic fan. Stephen Fletcher, 27.1 million. Duncan Ferguson. So, I mean, when you consider that most of these are modern footballers, Duncan Ferguson, an accumulated 28.3 million. Kieran Tierney is the 4th most expensive Scottish footballer of all time. It was you that actually made me look at this, because you mentioned one of the guys who's sitting second at the weekend. Scott McTominay, 30.5 million, only one transfer. So if he or Tierney move for big money, they'll smash it. Jordan Rhodes. Now, Andy Rhodes was his dad, is his dad. And Andy played in goals for Dunfermline. Jordan was born in Dunfermline or Kirkcaldy, yes. So that obviously, virtue of that fact, he played for Scotland. 34.7 million. And Kev, who is the most expensive Scottish footballer of all time?
Can't remember.
The legendary figure, Ollie Burke.
Ollie Burke, aye.
36.9 million pound he has cost various footballers.
Ollie Burke, Kirkcaldy's second finest son after Jockey Wilson.
Yeah, aye, absolutely.
Jockey Wilson's on Like, there should be a statue of Jockey Wilson and Kirk.
Oh yeah, I know, but typical Fife, right? I'm allowed to slag us off because I'm one of them. I'm a Fifer. I remember a documentary was made about Jockey Wilson. They were going into the boozers in Kirkcaldy, and this is the attitude. It was like, I was that good at darts, I could beat him. And these people are sitting at pubs having achieved nothing in their lives. Gordon Coney, here we go.
See, the thing is on that list, if we would have paid the money for Stephen Fletcher, it would be above Duncan Ferguson.
Well, I know. Aye, exactly. The extra 300 grand. Gordon Coney, afternoon Acsom, and an afternoon to you. I've seen that artwork. I don't know if it's AI, Kev, but it's like a group of Celtic players, past and present, or at a bar. Remember the bar room artwork, and it would be like dogs playing pool. I never quite got my head around that. And then you would get like Elvis Presley and James Dean sitting in a diner. Somebody's done that, and I'm not sure if it's AI, but it's cracking. Afternoon Acsom. Wednesday, in my opinion, is our biggest domestic challenge this season. If we can get through that with a good performance and win, it sends out a massive statement to the rest. Yes, it does. I know we absolutely dismantled them at Hampden Park, Kev. It wasn't as easy at home. How's it going to go at Pittodrie for you?
It's going to be a tough place to go. It is going to be a tough place, and it should be a tough place to go. I've just got a wee sneaky suspicion that Rodgers is going to work his magic in the dressing room again, like he done in the semi-final. And he goes, "This is your chance to put down another marker. Mm-hmm. This is your chance to show that you are the top dogs here, and go out there." He's done it loads of times in the Glasgow derbies, ain't he? He just seems to revel on these occasions. So I think we'll win. I don't think you can't expect it'll be the 6-0 like it was at the semi-final. You can't expect that. I probably expect the game that they will have a spell in the game. They will have a spell in the game. We might need to actually hang in there like we've done at Tynecastle and we've done at Rugby Park. They seem to actually do better in the start of the second half, though. They seem to have really, really poor first halves. Then the manager does whatever he does at half time, and they seem to come on in the second half. So we're going to have a spell where we're going to be in there. What I really like about this side, this version of Brendan Rodgers' Celtic, is we score goals in bursts.
Yeah, absolutely.
We score goals. We go 1-0 up, and we'll hit you with a setting quite quick, or we'll go 2-0 up like we done on Saturday. There, we scored the setting goal, and next thing you can, it's 5 in the space of 7 minutes.
Yep.
We do Hearts at Tynecastle 1-0, 4 minutes later it's 2. The game's out. The game's past you at that point. And when we get on top in this game on Wednesday night, because we will have a spell when we're on top, we will have a spell when we are creating chances. If we score 1, I wouldn't mind getting a quick second one and seeing where it goes, because they will come back at us if we have a decent first half. I expect it to come back to us in the second half, but as soon as we score first, then I think it changes the complexion of the game. Against Aberdeen, at the game at Celtic Park, we had a dodgy 10 minutes. Then we completely battered them for the rest of it. And if we would have won that game 4-2, 5-2, nobody would have any complaints. That painted a narrative which was absolutely smashed when we went to Hampden. But that narrative has started creeping in again. Oh, you're going to Aberdeen. This is a chance for Aberdeen to get back into this title race, blah, blah, blah. This and that. So I think it's another chance to smash that narrative. I think we could actually score 2 quick goals, but there is a time that we're going to need to have patience and stick with the team, because Aberdeen will come at us. They will come at us for a spell, and the longer it goes on, nothing each, the more chance their spell might actually be dangerous for us. So first goal is all important for us. It really is. Deflate the crowd. If we score a first one, then do what we have been doing and score a goal maybe 3-4 minutes later and go 2-0 up. Then we'll see what happens there. But I'm expecting a wee game. I'm expecting a spell like we've had at the recent away games at Tynecastle and Rugby Park. There is a spell where we've got to hang in there, and hopefully Rodgers will realise this and make the changes a wee bit earlier. And the change seems to be he drops a midfielder alongside Callum McGregor. And he done it against Bruges as well. Instead of them being too far apart, he poos one in and kind of goes to a slight double pivot. So maybe he'll start like that, but he usually doesn't. And he sees how the game goes and makes the changes in game. But we're going to need to be behind the team, because there will be times where we'll be under pressure up there.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, he does tend, and Brendan Rodgers teams tend to do that, even for 20, 25-minute spells in a game, Kev, where it doesn't look as though we're creating much, but we are soaking up a lot of the pressure and a lot of the attacking play from the opposition. And it looks as though you're kind of allowing the game to run away from you a bit, and then we hit them. I mean, talking about scoring in bursts, that was 3 goals in a 5-minute period at the weekend there, 5 minutes, and it's like, they know, they smell blood, they know the vulnerabilities are there once you've just conceded a goal and they're having to regroup and all that, and we're just hitting them again and then hitting them again. And we're sitting there at half time and it was 5-0. We were talking about the times that we've managed to score 9 goals in my lifetime. And I think there's been 3 occasions. Arbroath, 1993, where we beat them 9-1. Was Danny McGrain the manager?
Danny McGrain was the manager of Arbroath,
Yeah, I know that Arbroath fans used to wear fake Danny beards and all that kind of stuff. Strange lot. And we beat Aberdeen, of course, 9-0, Celtic Park. Paddy McCourt came on and scored a penalty, I remember. Mark McGee was the Aberdeen manager. And then, of course, Dundee United, 9-0 at Tannadice, under Ange Postecoglou, sorry. So 3 games I can recall that we scored 9 goals. And I'm sitting there, and it was going to go one of 2 ways, Kev. It was going to go down the 9-goal route, or it was going to be like Dundee last season, where we're 5-0 up at half-time and we win 6-1. And it went another way. Psychologically, how does that happen? Do you think it's on both parts, where it's like, I remember up at Pittodrie once, did we not go 3 or 4-0 up the first half? McInnes ran up the tunnel at half time, and it's all about ultra defensive. Let's make sure we didn't get embarrassed here. Or is there psychologically something in the Celtic team where it's about, you know what, we've won this, so it's difficult to go 6, 7, 8? How do you think that pans out?
For me, having played games of football, and if you're that far in front, you do automatically drop down the gears. You do. It's a natural thing. With the amount of games that we've got playing, I generally thought on Saturday we came out in the second half and put the handbrake on, but we still created plenty of chances. Even the subs coming on didn't inject that pace back into us, because it was the game was absolutely finished at that point. Once again, I think if we score one of the chances early in the second half, then it becomes an 8-9-0. But the fact that we didn't, the game just sort of petered out. If we take one of the early chances, then I think the snowball effect happens again. You talk about scoring goals in batches. Look what Dortmund done to us. They scored goals in batches. It happens. The game turns away, and this is where it's really important that you've got to play the game in front of you. You all go out with a game plan, but when that game plan goes south, you've actually got to be able to go, right, play this game in front of us for 20 minutes, or play this game in front of us to half time, then we get in and regroup. And I think this team has learned that after Dortmund. And again, I think the second half, on Saturday, we played the game that was in front of us. But in the back of my mind, I do think if we had scored if we score an early goal in that second half, take one of the chances, then I think you are running up an 8-9-0. The fact that it didn't come, then the game just sort of peters out. The subs are coming on to the gentle jogging and like no really influence the game. Taylor was unlucky, hit the post right enough.
How many times did we hit the woodwork? 2 or 3 times?
2 or 3 times. Atati came on, put over a great ball. The subs just came on and just done it, but we had the handbrake on by that point.
I think the best thing that happened to them, Kev, was their goalie getting injured. Because I think when Hamilton came on, he must have made another 2 or 3 saves himself as well. Laidlaw was basically just cannon fodder for us in the first half. So all of these things, but regardless of all that, a really impressive victory and really impressive performances by the people like Luke McCowan, who stepped up and gave dilemmas to Brendan Rodgers. And we're going to be talking our way through some more of those players and whether or not they will start against Aberdeen. John Sweeney, always great to see you, John. A win on Wednesday put Celtic in a strong position going into the festive period. And McCowan and Bernardo and McGregor for the midfield. Well, we will ask you that question. You are starting with McCowan. Bernardo's a player that, again, you talk about leadership. He is the captain of Portugal under 21s. There are leadership qualities within Paulo Bernardo, Kev. We've got a number of captains in our team here, and that's brilliant. And he's a player that was coming on and performing really well off the bench and making a really good impact. And then he gets a start and plays a full 90 minutes. Does he retain the jersey against Aberdeen? Do you play Bernardo, and then basically your midfield three would be Bernardo, McCowan and McGregor? Is that what you do against Aberdeen?
No, I don't think so. I don't think Rodgers will do that. I do think that he looked at resting Engels and Hatate at the weekend with a view of the games coming up. I think Luke McCowan put a massive fudge into that works.
A fudge. Now, wait a minute. Earlier on,
I couldn't think of the word there. I couldn't think of the word.
No, but earlier, Kev, you're hungry, right? Because earlier on you mentioned revels. You said they revelled in it. And honestly, I'm thinking to myself, what revel do I prefer? Is it the toffee one or is it the orange one? Well, it can't be the orange one, so it maybe the coffee one. And now you're talking about fudge. You hungry, mate? You need a wee snack.
No. I cat amongst the pigeons. That's what I meant to say, but I couldn't get.
Sorry, I gave you time to think.
My brain wasn't actually engaging there. I think McCowan has probably gave the manager food for thought, because I think he would have went back to what he sees as his strongest three, which is Kalmack, Rio and Engels.
Mm-hmm.
But then he might be looking at it going, well, how can you rest McCowan after that? Engels is maybe struggling with the adaptation, and they could maybe do with a little time out. But then again, I'm having a look at it going like, well, he needs to learn that you're going to end up going to places like Pataudry and it's going to be up and at them. So they bring him back in. I think I would play McCowan instead of Engels and bring in Hatate. But then again, now I've just said that out loud, I think Hatate is too similar to McCowan, so I would maybe bring in Engels rather than Hatate, because Hatate is too similar to Engels. So I would go Engels, Kalmack and McCowan.
You know, one of the reasons I go Engels, one of the reasons I would go Engels, right, is I do feel, and I'm not even going to use the word athletic or combative, I think Aberdeen are dirty. I think they've got a couple of guys in the team. They think they're hard. Aye, absolutely. They think they're hard men. And against us in the two games we've played this season, I feel that they've been over the top with a lot of their tackles. Who's the guy? Is it the Norwegian Nielsen? I felt Nielsen was lucky not to get sent off the twice we've played them this season. And they really are. They're going in hard. They're going in kind of tough. Of our midfielders, Hatate is my favourite player. Does he relish that kind of challenge? I'm not sure he does, to be honest with you, Kev. So I think Hatate's the game changer off the bench.
I'm having a look at the balance. I'm having a look at the balance of the midfield and the skill set that the midfield's actually got. And if Engels starts, then I want to see that change. I want to see him closer to Callum McGregor. Mm-hmm. I want to see him getting the ball and driving with the ball and doing that work. I think a lot of the times, especially against the better teams, especially like I got Bruges the other week there and at Tynecastle, he's too far away. And it's the way that the team sets up. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to drop, and what Rodgers has done, Rodgers has actually dropped Hatate back twice deeper, and Hatate's came in and absolutely had a great game. I would do it slightly different if starting off. I would bring back Engels closer to Callum McGregor. I think Engels is a number 6. I really do think he's a number 6. And I do think against better opposition, the lack of options we've got in the middle of the park shows, because we've got too many similar players. Bernardo's trying to develop into a number 8, but I still think he's got a better skill set as a double pivot. I think we've got a lot of great combinations of double pivots, but we need actual natural 8s, and the only natural 8 that we've actually got is McCowan. You can't play Hatate as a 6 because he loses the ball far too often.
True.
So Hatate's a conundrum. He hasn't got the pace and the power to be the 8. He's got the technical ability. There's a lack of difference, balance in that middle of the park. But I do actually see Engels as being a number 6. Maybe not the same sort of dynamic as what McGregor's got, but I think he's got I think he has got something there. I can't see him as an 8. I do not see that. I didn't see that. No, he could develop. He's a young lad. He could actually develop, and I think even Bernardo's been saying that. He says he's trying to develop into an 8 where he's been used to playing as a 6.
Mm-hmm.
But again, for an 8, I don't think Bernardo's got the pace that we actually need.
No, well, you're going to go for Callum McGregor, Engels, and McKeown. Let us know in the comment section if you agree with Kevin Graham, or if you would draft in Bernardo or Hatate for any of those midfield spots. Now, Mickey Moynihan, great Acsom night. Thanks for coming along, Mickey. It's a Sunday night. I know it's not ideal if you've got your work on the Monday. With John Collins at Gracie's Bar last night, great venue as well. What a great football man he is. 100%. Was blown away at the level of dedication he had to invest to reach the heights of his career. A legend. And this is the other thing as well. Here's a guy, Kev, who got into the fitness and the science and the diet due to the fact he was a skinny wee laddie who was 9.5 stone. So, naturally he didn't have that about him, and he had to work on it to the point where I think he probably became quite obsessed with it. And then when he was a coach, he then had to try and implement that into the culture of the football clubs that he was at. And he felt that it was very difficult when he was in Scotland. He spoke about this. Even he got a kind of wake-up call when he went over to play in Monaco with regards to their dedication to their craft and the training and the fitness regimes, etc. He said, but he was able to adapt. And that's where we started talking about the Scottish players going over to Italy and adapting to that different culture and improving as football players. So, yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Mickey, and come along to future events that we are running, because we're always looking to get big names, different names, unique names, good combinations, all that kind of stuff on a stage. And hopefully you enjoyed it last night. Stephen Donnelly, do we play McKeown before Hatate on Wednesday? Well, Kev Graham thinks yes. I think at this time he has given us more in the game. So Stephen seems to agree with you, Kev.
But then on the other hand, I'm thinking, would Hatate make a difference coming off the bench more than McKeown? If we're having that wee nightmare spell, would I be happier with McKeown coming off the bench to actually shore up and be more safer with the ball? Because
Bernardo's good at that, though.
Bernardo is good at that, So, look, I says, the 5 options we've got for the 3, I'm happy with any combination.
Yeah.
And the reason that I've dropped Hatate there is because I think him and McKeown are too similar.
What's your best midfield without McGregor then, mate?
Bernardo is the 6, Engels and McKeown. And
I'm not saying drop McGregor, but, for the occasions where McGregor might have an injury, or, what is your best 3? And that's something we need to think about at times as well. And that's another point of debate. We've got Stuart Ramsey coming in. Afternoon, Acsom. That's a drum kit. And all my fellow Tims, hail, hail. What a performance from the team on Saturday, Stuart. Absolutely agree with you. It was brilliant. And at one moment during the halftime break where we're talking about 9 or 10 even, didn't happen, but it was still a great performance. Square sausage Mick. Too much food references when I've not eaten today, Kev. Far too many food references. McKeown deserves to be in the team on Wednesday. Well, I think a lot of people are agreeing with you.
I'm glad he's square sausage and no slice sausage.
I know.
Ends that debate for me completely.
Just cannot get my head around that slice argument. Monty, on the second half on Saturday, would that not have been an opportunity to throw Sinisalo and Cummings onto the park? You're talking my language, Monty. Now, the Cummings one, we've been banging on about it, just like we banged on about Ben Doak, just like we banged on about Kelly and Vata and Boston Lawal. Kev, we are banging a drum for the youth development. But there's also another part of this where it's Brendan Rodgers knows a lot more about youth development than you and me and everybody else probably put together. So we've got to respect the decisions. But it does seem the situation last season against Dundee where we beat them 6-1, at half-time, we had 2 kids on the bench. Kelly came on, scored a goal, and, made quite a few of us sit up, I think, and take notice because he played really well in the second half. Vata didn't get on that night, but at the weekend, we didn't even have that option. Now, is it a case of us not having the calibre of youngster to sit on the bench? Do you think that Brendan Rodgers is saying that quite clearly? That is a situation? Because I'm looking at Cummins, I'm thinking, right, when it comes to the technical side of football, all these people know far more than I. But at the same time, I've used an example where the manager of a football club isn't intrinsically involved in the players in the B team, right? They're not, because they're relying on the coaches. They're relying on the coaches.
Rodgers did say at the press conference on Friday that he's in complete charge of the B team when he was describing them, the Paul Teasdale question. He says, I'm in complete charge of the first team squad and the B team. So he did hang his hat on that.
If you go to the B team gaffer and say, right, I need a left back. So I'm going back to that example we gave with Collins and Dyler, right? I need a left back. We're going away to Iceland at the weekend or whatever. We've got a friendly game in Germany, whatever it is, and we're one shot. There's a responsibility on them to say, there's your man. You know what I mean? So we're running at the moment with two strikers. At some point, has it been a question? Because I've seen a lot of our benches, Kev, where there's two centre-halves sitting on the bench. And you think to yourself, maybe it would be good to have a young striker on the bench because we don't have that backup. So no, you're right. He's taking responsibility for it. So you live and die by these decisions. It is a worry, though, that we don't have the quality coming through that could sit on the bench, as Monty says, and it's 5-0 at half time. Go and get 45 minutes. Grab yourself a goal.
Obviously, Rodgers thought Daniel Kelly was ready when he chucked him on at 5-0 against Dundee last season, and he obviously thinks Daniel Cummins is not ready, not even to get in the squad, to even get the chance to come on at 5-0. So I think it's the same that night when we were completely struggling in the wide areas and the attacking areas at this point last season, or over the next couple of weeks last season, at Rockovata never got a look in. You're 5-0 up against Dundee and he didn't get a look in, he didn't get on the park. I remember saying at the time, I think that says quite a bit. I do think that actually says quite a bit. And the fact is that we haven't offered Cummins a contract. He's not even getting in the match day squad. He only recently seemed to step up and actually go start training with the first team. I think the lad will be leaving the club.
That's disappointing, isn't it? It really is. I mean, but at the same time, Kev, we read out 13 names of kids. I say kids, guys who were at Celtic who left as teenagers in the last maybe 4 or 5 seasons, and very few of them have done anything really in the great scheme of things. So you've got to balance it and say, well, maybe the club were right, maybe they weren't good enough, or maybe there was a gap in their development prior to them leaving the football club. Because we spoke about it when we realised that Barry Hepburn had been released from Bayern Munich, and he's not got a club at the moment. He was unattached, and then we looked at all the other guys from Leo Hjeld right down to Karamoko Dembele, and obviously Ben Doak's doing well. Dembele's part of a Queen's Park Rangers team, and he's in the squad and he's playing games, etc. But none of them have gone and absolutely smashed it out of the park, except for Ben Doak, who is a work in progress. So, yeah, as fans, you want to see that youngster coming through. Are you more of a view of trust Brendan's judgment on this?
Aye, I'm trusting Brendan's judgment on this. He sees that there is a lot of guys that we know that go to see the B team and they like Cummins, and I've went to see a few B team games myself. And the one thing, the big fella knows where the back of the net is. He's got a decent touch. The one thing that jumped out to me was I don't think he lacked that wee bit of pace that I would want in a centre forward. That was the only thing that I could see in the limited sample size that I've actually seen him. That was the only thing I went like, you maybe lack it. You've got ability, but you maybe would lack a wee bit of pace that what we would be looking for in a centre forward. The guy will have a career. I've got no doubts that the boy will go and have a career, but I don't think it's going to be with us. And I think Rodgers has already called that. I think there was a wee slight message when the question was brung up in the press conference with his answer. I think Rodgers has been out and that he wasn't in the squad for a game at home against Dundee actually maybe says it all. After the guy had a decent week scoring in the Youth Champions League and that as well.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
When you have a look at, I was unfortunate to see Sports Scene on Saturday night. and I watched the highlights of all our games, and they were talking about, I think guys came on for the boy that came on for Kilmarnock, the boy Bobby Wales that scored. He had scored a hat-trick for the youth team during the week, and there was another guy, I think, came on for Dundee United that had scored for the youth team during the week and that as well, and they'd got promoted into the squad and they got a wee bit of a run at it. So Ken, we're at a different level.
Brendan might surprise us because obviously Francis Turley was the last youngster we were talking about, Kev, and he did get the contract. He has sat on the bench a couple of times, so you never know. It could be one of these tests of character that Brendan tends to go down as well. Double denim, he was there last night and he was wearing double denim. He does not disappoint. He does not disappoint. Afternoon, folk. I was kind of hoping for a treble combo, like denim shirt, jacket, jeans, but double will do. Afternoon, folks. Hope you guys are all well. Great to meet a few of you at the John Collins event last night. Hope there's not too many sore heads this morning. Well, this is the big thing because it is great to meet people who tune in and you never actually see them other than their name and their avatar, and they come along to these events. Joe Hamilton, good afternoon. Tim's, Paulo and Luke must be starters. Let's talk about some of the other starters, probably not in as much depth as the midfield, because that's taken us a wee while, Kev. Left back, Alex Valle comes in, and unfortunately for him, didn't have the best of his games. I mean, this is the thing. We talk about Taylor against Valle. Valle gets his start, and I don't think it was his best performance, even though we were comfortable winners. Taylor, does he come back in against Aberdeen?
I think that was always going to be the plan anyway. I think Taylor is our first choice left back. Brendan thinks he's the first choice left back, and he'll come into any game that Rodgers may see as. It's funnily enough, like Baye started at Hampden, but again Taylor was just coming back for injury. But if Taylor fits in what Rodgers would term a massive game, then Taylor starts every day of the week, because I think Rodgers can absolutely trust him, even though Rodgers has been sending out wee messages that he's probably away and Celtic are not going to give him what he wants. I think Rodgers has already says that basically in a roundabout way, by saying, I understand his team's position, that this is his last chance of a big contract at his age. And Greg Taylor will be asking to be one of the high, will want to go in the higher wage bracket of that squad.
Mm-hmm.
He might not get that at Celtic, but he'll get that down south. So whatever Greg Taylor wants, he will get.
He'll get it comfortably, Kev.
Yes.
He'll get it comfortably. That's when we're up against it. I mean, Greg Taylor for me is not one of our greatest players. But
for me, we're only in this position as well. Sorry for interrupting there. For me, we're only in this position as well because the first choice left back wasn't available in the summer.
Yeah.
And but Taylor will come in because Rodgers really does trust him, and he's a leader, and he's been about the block a bit.
Yeah, and we will wait and see what happens, because as of the 1st of January, like young Daniel Cummins, Greg Taylor can speak to other clubs. Trusty or Scales? Now, Scales comes in, scores opening goal, sets up the second one with a delightful wee dink over the top.
Brilliant ball.
He's done that so many times, Kev. It's his MO. That's his ball. That's what his go-to is, right? Does he start against Aberdeen?
No, Trusty comes back in, mainly because Rodgers has already says that Trusty's got more pace, and Aberdeen hit us on the pace the last time.
That was a big difference, wasn't it, between the 2-2 and the 6-0? That was a massive difference, wasn't it?
That's why Trusty will come back in.
Yep. And then, of course, Ida Kyogo. I mean, Kyogo for me every single day of the week is our first choice striker. However, there are certain games, Kev, where you might need that combative force up top. Is this a game for Ida to start?
When I was looking at these run of games, Ida started against Ross County and Hibs, and Kyogo started against Aberdeen. Then Kyogo will start against Zagreb next week as well. So I think Kyogo starts, as you say, he's our first choice striker. Ida's going to be great to come off the bench if we need him. And it's a squad game. You need the 16 players to actually come on and contribute. So Kyogo goes in up top.
It's a great set of questions to ask, Kev, because what it's showing is that Brendan Rodgers is building that core group, a very, very strong core group of, let's say, 15, 16 players. If you can get that to 18, then you're firing. Where you're looking on the bench, you're thinking every one of them can come on and either see a game out or change a game. And I think we're moving towards that. Before we go, Kev, one final thing from you then is a prediction for Wednesday night, because I don't think I'll speak to you before then on Acsom at least. Prediction for Celtic versus Aberdeen at Pittodrie.
Predictions are for fools, Paul. That's why bookies are rich. I think we'll win the game. 3-1.
3-1. Okay, I'll take that every single day of the week. I'll take that. Let us know in the comments. We're going to be talking about it all week, of course. If you want to come to one of these fabled Acsom evenings with the next one that we are going to be involved in, actually, is Roy Aitken, Peter Grant and Pat Bonner, and the link is underneath this video. And we're running with that offer because a lot of you are taking up the 50% offer that we started on Black Friday. I know it's Monday, but it's Christmas. Why not? Just go for it. All you need to do is type in Acsom 1888 and you can be part of one of these nights that are becoming more and more enjoyable as the years go on, Kev. Who would be your number one, though? Because I know the main man was, doing the Celtic one last week. Who would you like to see? Because I think if you ask me, who would you like to see on a stage? I'm saying the Maestro. I'm like, how great would it be to get Paul McStay for 90 minutes for a sit-down chat? Get him over from Australia.
That's a one now, for us Celtic dads that you're probably looking at. You're probably looking at Paul McStay.
I'm thinking, which ones would I absolutely pay to go and see and wouldn't want to lose my chance of a ticket? McStay would be up there.
McStay. Definitely McStay.
Right, definitely. We'll see what we can do. Let us know in the comments if there's anybody else you want to see us talking to on a stage, and we will see what we can do. Just about anybody is contactable in this day and age. Whether or not they want to do it's another thing, but we will try. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and thank you once again, Kevin Graham, the OG, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers.